Hey guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my December wrap up. So I've been travelling for a full month and a half, which meant that my reading definitely took a toll. However, I finished 8 books and quite a lot of them were either books I was very anticipating or very hyped, and there's one lesser known book. So 2 5 stars, a lot of disappointments. Let's get into it. The first book I have to talk about is A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer. However, this is the art copy and it's got this like weird gate thing going on, so don't mind me closing the gate, but you know what book I'm talking about. So A Heart So Fierce and Broken is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and it was one of my most anticipated reads for January 2020, so it's coming out this month, and it was a new favourite for me. I gave it 5 stars just like I gave the first book. So instead of spoiling you for the series, I'll tell you what the first book is about, and it is on my best books of 2019 list, so I'm sorry if you're hearing this for the second time. But the first book follows Harper, who is a really kind, strong-willed girl, and she has cerebral palsy, which affects one of her legs. And yes, that disability rep is kind of a theme in the book, and it is discussed and mentioned and talked about. And she is dragged into this fantasy world by a guardsman called Grey, who hops over into our reality as we know it every month, term, season, to steal a girl back into this fantasy world because he's hoping one of them will break the curse. And the curse is that the prince in his realm turns into a monster every single season. It sounds like your stereotypical Beauty and the Beast retelling with disability rep, which it is, but at the same time it is definitely so much more. In this fantasy world, one of the things that I really love is that we get to see how royals' consequences truly do affect the people, and in this book in particular it goes in a bit of a different direction than the first one, because instead of focusing on the same characters, it switches to some new ones. One of them was a perspective I was very much looking forward to. It was Grey's perspective, and as Grey was my favourite character and my book crush from the first book, I was very pleased to be following him. But he is there along with some new characters who stole my heart and made me want to love them forever and protect them forever. And the main theme that I found in this book that really struck me was about how in war there are no good guys. In war there is no winning. In this one, you really get to see that from different perspectives, good people can look bad and bad people can look good. And all in all, we just all look so bad because we're doing treacherous things to other people. There are consequences for our actions and choices in war, and it's just painful all around. I don't want to say much more because I know a lot of people are anticipating this one, but if you haven't tried this series, you definitely should. This sequel, I will say, is not focused on disability rep because we're not as focused on Harper as we were before, but we do have a gay side couple who are kind of mentioned a lot in this book, but other than that, it's not quite the rep from the first book. Then I read Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera, and that was also my other most anticipated read for January 2020. However, it was a flop. In Infinity Sun, we follow Celestials and Spectres. Celestials are people who have natural born powers, and Spectres are people who drink the blood of creatures and humans so that they can take on these powers, and that is frowned upon and pretty bad. There's a big war going on between the Celestials and Spectres, and Emil, who is a brother who doesn't want to have any powers, ends up with powers, whereas his twin, Brighton, who really wants powers, doesn't get any. They kind of get dragged into the war and it just follows them. Yeah, this was a mess. I feel like fantasy is just not Adam Silvera's forte. The biggest problem with this was that everything was poorly executed. The characters were poorly done. They felt very 2D and they had very stereotypical goals. The plot was a bit predictable, and even plot points and like plot twists kept repeating, so it felt repetitive. And then the one at the end was very predictable and a bit ridiculous. I felt like the romance itself was ridiculous and kind of not developed enough. And yeah, all of these characters just filled out stereotypes. It wasn't written very well, the world building was poor, there was just nothing I really liked about this book. Oh, there was one thing. There was a moment where male body image was discussed and self-consciousness, and I like that it was about a male who is a male character because we don't have enough attention on self-consciousness that male people feel about their bodies. We also have a lot of LGBT plus characters. The romance in this one is gay, it's Adam Silvera, but yeah, not his best. Also, just want to briefly mention that I reread Twilight. I reread Twilight every year and I saved it till December. It was just as fun as always. I can't believe that I always find something new about this series that I didn't notice the first time round. But yeah, it was hilarious. Edward's mood swings give me whiplash. Still love Bella, still love Jasper, still love Carlisle and the gang. It's just iconic, so iconic. I have a defense for Twilight video. It's pretty old now, but I'll link it up there anyway and down below. Moving on, I read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J Maas, and this is me just continuing the series for the first time. So the first book follows Selena, who is an assassin, and she gets dragged into this quest, this competition, which is hosted by the king, and they hire all of these like criminals and they're going to fight it out to become the king's assassin. And if she does become the king's assassin, in a few years she could win her freedom. That's the premise of the first book. However, I have been told that the books kind of generally veer off course from that very quickly, and this book proved that it does veer off course from that pretty quickly. I like this one more than the first one. Maybe it's because of how much Kale is featured in this, and I am Team Kale. I actually really liked Kale's storyline the most because he makes some mistakes, he has to make some very important choices, and he kind of messes up and is trying to think about things and rethink who he is loyal to. And I love a loyal character, and he's got loyalties to quite a few people and they kind of contradict each other. A lot of politics is coming to this. I like politics in my fantasy. However, I still feel like the writing could be better, and I still feel like the fantasy elements are just not explained enough at all, and the world building is just, it's not enough for how much they're messing with the fantasy elements. Then we're going to talk about a trilogy, and I read the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy last month. I actually listened to this on audiobook. So first up we have The Fellowship of the Ring, then you have The Two Towers, and lastly you have The Return of the King. In this one it's about Frodo, and Frodo is given this ring which has this great power, but the power is so strong that he needs to destroy this ring. However, there are also these leaders who crave this ring and crave that power, so they're kind of trying to dodge the bad guys and complete their quest. And this fellowship is formed to protect Frodo along this quest. Didn't like the Fellowship of the Ring. I thought it was very boring, and that's literally my number one word for that book. Boring. It was slow paced, it was travel-y, they just faced obstacles and then had to overcome them, and I felt like those obstacles weren't even that great. Then we moved on to The Two Towers, and I liked this one marginally more than the first one. The first part was much the same as the first one, where it was quite boring, but in the second part a character who is my favourite character in The Hobbit makes an appearance, which is Gollum, and also I started to feel affinity towards Samwise because I like a loyal character, and he was just being so supportive and encouraging and cute that, like, how can you not like Sam, guys? And then by The Return of the King I was actually enjoying this series because the first part was full of action, it was exciting, and then we also had Sam just being basically the underrated hero of the series and really cute, and Gollum being his usual creepy self. And then it kind of fell apart a little bit. Things were resolved a bit too easily, and then the last part of the book just drags and is too much epilogue and it gets a bit boring. But at the same time I was feeling bittersweet because it was the end of the series, and between reading the second book and the third book I watched the first movie and all of the Hobbit movies, and as I like the films I have to admit it might have influenced my opinion of the third book a little bit. Last but not least I have to tell you about The Space We're In by Katja Balin, and this is another new favourite from me. I rated it 5 stars and oh my goodness guys, you need to read this one. So this one follows Frank and Max. Frank is a 10-year-old boy and he is an older brother to Max, who is a 5-year-old boy with autism. Now Max's autism is quite severe. It manifests in not being able to hear very loud noises, sound colours are painful to him, he can only eat certain foods, and therefore he needs a lot of extra love, care and attention. His dad works and his mum is quite strung out trying to care for both of these boys at home. She doesn't have time to do her own art anymore, which was her major hobby, and Frank is kind of struggling with all of his emotions because he loves his younger brother Max, of course he does, but at the same time he is also a child who needs love, care and attention too. So they've got that struggle going on, and then a tragedy strikes the family and it's about them all trying to cope with it. There are so many things I loved about this book and I'm going to just list them quickly here for you. The first one is that it shows that parents are imperfect too, which is very important in middle grade. The second one is that I feel like it handles the themes of being an older sibling to someone who needs some extra care and support very, very well in a way that children can understand, but also adults can learn from too. Thirdly, it does get very dark. It deals with grief and sadness and pain and so many emotions that I had tears in my eyes while I was reading this book, but it handles it all very well and it's beautifully written and balanced. It's also got some very lovely illustrations in here done by Laura Carlin. And then lastly, friendship group. In this one, like, the two friends are side characters, but the way that they support Frank and the way that they respect Frank's lifestyle and family was just, even the adult friends in this one, like, all the friendships just warmed my heart so much. This book is heartwarming, this book is heart destroying, and it was really, really powerful. I don't think I'm communicating how important it is that you read this book, but please do. And there you guys have it. I had quite a fantasy-filled month with a lot of ups and downs, but that is it for my 2019 reading year. I did manage to finish off the year with 180 books. Very happy and very excited to see what I'm going to be reading in 2020. Please let me know in the comment section down below what was your favourite read in the month of December, or what was your worst read in the month of December. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that bell to be updated every time I have a new video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!